Since the October 19th federal election, Prime Minister Trudeau has received strong support for his new government. Here with me by phone in Ottawa is Abacus Data's chairman, Bruce Anderson. Thank you for joining us, Bruce.
My pleasure. Good to talk with you.
This is your second report card on the new Prime Minister, and in 10 out of 10 categories, you find Canadians are giving the new PM a passing grade.
Absolutely. We asked people about 10 different items that we asked as well in January. And on all 10, we found a pretty substantial majority said that they thought the government was doing an acceptable or better job. The strongest areas of approval were for level of openness and accountability, working with the provincial premiers, the choices that the Prime Minister made in his cabinet, the personal values that he brings in handling his job, and interestingly, representing Canada internationally.
So the big question is, how long do you think this honeymoon will last?
Well, I think it's always been the case that people in politics love to say that it's the economy, stupid, that's the only thing that ever matters in public assessments. But that hasn't really been true for a while in Canada. There was a good period of time leading up to the last election where people thought the economy was in pretty good shape, but they were still thinking it might be time to change the government. And of course, today we've got 2/3 of people saying the economy is in poor shape, but most people say the government's doing a pretty good job. So it won't be the economy necessarily that causes a breach in the level of satisfaction that we're seeing with this government. Most of what I think is holding up satisfaction right now or keeping it elevated is about the style that the government is using. And by style, I don't just mean the cosmetics of it. It's more the way in which Mr. Trudeau talks about the issues with people, meets with premiers to talk about things like climate change, works with Aboriginal communities to try to improve the dialogue there. Those are all things that people felt were substantively important and somewhat missing in the past. And so I think as long as Mr. Trudeau stays in that direction, a fair number of people are going to be inclined to support him.
Among New Democrats, you show that 88% think the Prime Minister is given a passing or better mark. Does that spell trouble for Tom Mulcair?
It does put pressure on Mr. Mulcair. One of the things that's really been clear in the data since the election is that New Democratic Party supporters are pretty happy with the kind of government that the Trudeau administration is bringing. Conservatives are obviously less happy, but they're more satisfied than you might think on a number of issues. Really, conservative dissatisfaction is contained to a smaller number of issues that have to do with ISIS, with the refugee issue, to some degree with carbon, but not on representing Canada internationally, for example.
And that goes to a point, during the election, the Conservatives thought that international affairs was a strong suit for them, but your findings show that nearly 2/3 of Tories give Justin Trudeau a passing or better grade. That seemed somewhat counterintuitive, shall we say.
It definitely was the case, that Conservatives thought that the Liberals were not going to be competitive with Mr. Trudeau as leader on the question of international relations or on managing the economy, that this has turned out to be a different situation from public opinion standpoint, including among conservative-oriented voters. They tend to look at the performance of Mr. Trudeau and say, it's okay as far as we're concerned. They're not necessarily the most enthusiastic about it, but they're certainly not of the view that he's been a big failure in those areas. And the large majority of conservative supporters were happy with the state visit to Washington and believe that there has been value in the Prime Minister's international travel generally.
Thank you, Bruce, for sharing your insights. We'll be back with The Point.